Hi, I'm Pete Smith and I'm from Tutv. We're here today in Manchester, marching against austerity and filming as we go, interviewing people. We're here because the mainstream media have failed to cover events like this over the last few years. About 1.5 million people have attended marches just like this in the last couple of years, in fact since the start of this Parliament, and there's been little or no coverage in the mainstream media. That's why we're here, to make sure that trade unionists have a voice and trade union news is reported honestly.
The message of the rally today was austerity wrecked lives, and we believe that there's plenty of evidence to justify that statement given the damage done to our communities by the coalition government since 2010. This rally is not an end in itself, and it's not the first one we've organised in recent years. In fact, it's the third rally in the last 12 months in the Northwest. This time last year we were mobilising for a demonstration in support of the NHS to coincide with the Conservative Party conference which was being held here in Manchester at the end of last September. We had an enormous mobilisation that day, support from across the country, the biggest ever demonstration that's been held in Manchester in history. In March we had a demonstration against austerity in Liverpool to mark the cuts in council budgets, and we had tremendous support from the Merseyside communities and trade unions. And today in Manchester we carry that on. A good show of strength from our branches, in Unison in particular, from across the Northwest, demonstrating their views that there has to be change in Britain. There has to be a fairer deal for the Northwest, for our people and for workers in public services. And we now move on to the demonstration in London on the 18th of October, where there's a national demonstration in support of a fair pay rise for all workers in Britain. As has been said in the rally today, there is a chronic economic problem with the suppression of wages in this country. We live in a consumer society. It's important that people have money to spend on their goods and services to stimulate the economy. So it's not only in the self-interest of our members that we promote fairer pay, but in the interest of a better and fairer society and economic growth.
Hiya folks. Manchester Trades Council is the local body of the TUC that coordinates action between branches in Manchester. And I would like to thank the Northwest TUC and Unison for inviting me to speak today. And there's terrible feedback up here, for inviting me to speak today. Because it's great that I'm going to be followed by some general secretaries. But I think it's important as well that people like me, local grassroots activists, are able to address gatherings like this. Because we are the people who build for events like this in our workplaces and our branches and our communities. It is great to have an event like this in a city like Manchester, which has such a history of trade unionism. The TUC was founded here in 1868 by the Manchester and Salford Trades Councils. And when you think back to those times, it's very difficult to imagine what life must have been like then. But I tell you what, it's very difficult, it would have been very difficult even 5 years ago to imagine what life was going to be like here in Britain in 2014. We are seeing things that many of us thought we would never see in our lives again, and which many of us have never seen before. There are people sleeping on the streets in significant numbers. There are people who have no homes. There are people who are relying on food banks. There are people who are being driven to the edge of suicide and who are being driven over that edge and who are starving to death because they have been unable to find a way through a benefit system which was designed as a social security safety net, but which in the hands of this government has turned into some sort of sick social experiment to see how people fare with no money whatsoever in a society where the only way to meet your most basic human needs is to pay for them. This government is vicious and it is evil, and it is time it went. We said in this city in May that we had had enough of these Tories, whether they be card-carrying members of the Conservative Party or whether they be people who describe themselves as Liberal Democrats, yet are prepared to prop up a government which has no democratic mandate at all without them, and which goes far, far further than being simply illiberal in its vicious class hatred of those of us who cannot work and those of us who do work to keep society going and to create the wealth that is going so disproportionately to people at the top at the moment at the expense of the rest of us. I am glad we got rid of these lot from our City Council in May, and I hope that next May we will take the opportunity to get rid of the last Tory appeaser standing here in Manchester when we vote out the MP for Manchester Withington and replace him with someone better. You know, folks, voting is important. And for some of us, life is so difficult and so hard that voting is all we can reasonably be expected to do. But some of us can do more. We are working. We do have a bit more money coming in. And most importantly, we are members of trade unions. And the union movement is playing its role in this campaign. Since the huge march for the NHS last September, we have seen workers at the universities achieve a pay rise, which, although small, was 100% more than they would have achieved if they had not gone out on strike. I think we should congratulate those workers on what they did achieve. We are seeing a worldwide campaign for fast food workers' rights, led here by the BFAWU and involving the trades councils and other unions. All these workers want is an hourly rate of pay which is reasonable, and the guarantee of enough hours of work to be able to use that rate of pay to make ends meet. I hope we will all show our support for those workers today. And then we have the firefighters, who are absolutely determined that they are not going to give in their fight for the perfectly reasonable request that they should be allowed to have a few years of happy retirement in exchange for spending their lives prepared to risk their lives so that the rest of us do not have to. I hope we will all send our solidarity to the Fire Brigades Union today. And then we have other workers with different employers, different pay claims, but all the same issues. That we just want enough money to be able to live. We want enough money to be able to live happy and fulfilled lives in this rich country in the 21st century. In July, we saw teachers and civil servants and local government workers out on strike together. And there is more strike action to come. It is the position of the TUC and of the trades councils that we should have coordinated industrial action when it is possible. I would say it is possible now, when we are being kicked about daily by this Tory government. We need as many people as possible out on strike on the 14th of October, and I hope all of you who are not part of that campaign will support those of us who are. I want to say one last thing about Manchester. As well as being a trade union city, this is a city which has seen major social changes over the years. Many, many people have stood here at events like this, involved in the campaign for the right for us all to be able to vote, and the campaign for the abolition of slavery in this country. Many of those people must have thought that maybe what they wanted was so extreme that it might even be impossible. There is a lie going round in this country at the moment that it is impossible to have an alternative to austerity. If you take one thing away from this event today, I hope it will be that you tell yourself that you will never ever allow this lot at the top to make you believe that change is impossible. Change is entirely possible if enough people like us want it enough to do enough to make it happen.